I always tell myself we're gonna have this nice, big, beautiful production, and then white balance is always out of whack, audio is an absolute catastrophe, but at least we're outside. Well, hello everyone, thanks for coming outside with me today. So I don't have my lav mic on me, so I apologize. I was really hoping that I'd be able to get some shots of me talking to and from the target, you know, turn you guys down there, but I have the shotgun mic today. So, and of course I stuck my target here behind a vine, so I'm gonna step back a little bit, but I want to kind of ramble as I come through the woods today and shoot. I just have one target. I'm gonna be setting it around the woods here. I have my tournament rig here, my 3D rig, and I want to talk real quick about setting up as an amateur, right? I am not a professional by any stretch of the imaginations. I shoot relatively decent scores, and particularly indoors on paper. That seems to kind of be my forte, even though I really wish it wasn't. Really wish I was a lot better at 3D. But I want to talk about judging and known 3D real quick. I want to talk about arrow setups and, you know, what you should be kind of trying for as an amateur. All right, if you're brand new to the sport of archery, or brand new to the sport of trying to take target archery seriously, in particular out here in 3D, what you should kind of expect, what expectations you should set for yourself, because I started out, you know, just like you. If you're brand new to the sport, or you've been doing this for 15, 20 years, just like I have, you know, what bars should you set for yourself, and how do you, you know, set those goals and say, yes, I met those goals and I'm getting better and better. Because in particular for 3D, if you're judging in particular, it can be really difficult. There are two main players in the 3D archery world. You have the IBO, which is in the northern half of the country, and you have the ASA, which lives predominantly in the southern half, out to a little bit in the Midwest. ASA is what you're gonna see most often televised. Competition Archery Media, they do a lot of really good stuff with the ASA, but again, those are all in the South, and there's a bigger subset of 3D archery in the South. When I say the South, I mean Tennessee and down. So the ASA on the national circuit has one in Metropolis, Illinois, and then one in London, Kentucky, and they are arguably two of the harder places to shoot. Metropolis is usually sweltering hot, and London has really difficult topography with lighting, much like what we would have here in the Northeast. Now, I'm here in central Pennsylvania, so our main thing is the IBO. And in the ASA, you have two different sides. You have the known, where you know the distance to the target, and you have the unknown, where you are judging. You step up to the target. Even though I have a rangefinder on my belt today, I'm still going to be judging, because most of the stuff I do is unknown. Although I do shoot some known stuff, and we'll talk about that as well. So those are your two main breakdowns, and then once you have decided if you're going to shoot a known, if you want to judge, right, which I think is a lot of fun. Judging is really fun. It's very difficult though, particularly if you're brand new to the sport of 3D archery, judging targets outside. There are certain classes that allow you to judge shorter distance and further distances. So let's break down the classes. You have known classes, in the ASA in particular. You have your pins classes, which is you're shooting a hunting style bow. You have short stabilizers, you're shooting whatever target area you want to shoot, but it's at hunting distances, 30 yards, 40 yards, 45 yards, right? That's a normal hunting distance, right? And a lot of those classes, in the ASA in particular, are known distance. You pull out a rangefinder, you click the distance, and then you can pin gap, right? Just like you would in the hunting woods, right? So the pins classes for both men, women, and youth in the ASA are very accessible. And if you live in the southern part of the country and you want to get into 3D, that would be a very good option to start off with. In the IBO in the north, we have the hunter class, which is a max 35, and then you go to pro hunter, advanced hunter, and so on and so forth. And again, you're stepping out the distances. You are judging exclusively in the IBO. There are no known classes in the IBO. So if you're going to judge in the hunter class, it's 35 maximum, and you have to judge all the targets there. Same thing with advanced hunter and pro hunter. Now, the lion's share of people shoot in open class or unlimited, and they're one and the same. You just use a different word for it, open or unlimited, and that means there is no restrictions. You have open categories and unlimited what you can do to it. So you can run whatever stabilizers you want to run on front and back. You can run a movable sight, whereas in those pins classes, you cannot move your sight. Once you step onto the course to start shooting, you have to leave your pins set exactly where they are. There is one, I think it's the IAA, the International Archers Association. They're very big on letting hunter classes use a normal sliding sight. Okay, just like you would in the woods. I've shot a single pin in the woods before too. It's very normal. It hasn't really caught on. I think the ASA finally brought a class on this year that lets you use a movable sight, but you still can't put a magnifying lens in here. That's where you have to jump to open or unlimited. You shoot a magnifying lens in here. I'm shooting a 4X lens, so it's like looking through a 4X pair of binoculars. Some guys shoot 6, some guys shoot 8. lots of different things you can do here in the open class. You can shoot whatever bow you want, whatever arrow you want. And then what does come down to, though, whether you're in the open or limited classes or the hunter classes, in ASA and IBO, is that there are sometimes speed limits and there sometimes are not. So speed limits is the actual feet per second of the arrow. The ASA does a phenomenal job at this, in my opinion, compared to the IBO. The ASA has a speed cap for all amateur classes of 280 feet a second. There's a little bit of wiggle room in there. Based on the chronograph, you get a couple percentage points in case you're a little bit over. But 280 feet a second, which for most people is like a hunting bow, right? So that really levels off the playing field there if that's the cap. In the IBO, they do not have speed limits until you start shooting in the semi-pro and pro classes. So you could be in the hunter class and up against a guy like me. I shoot a 31-inch draw, 70 pounds. I can shoot a super light arrow, and I can be shooting 320 feet a second if I want to, which really helps out with your judging game. If you're off by a yard or two, maybe you only drop or raise a little bit out of the scoring ring, right? You go from an 11 to a 10, or a 10 to an 8, instead of like an 11 to a 5 if you shoot a really slow bow. So in the IBO, I don't think they do as good a job as the ASA. The ASA still does have speed caps then for semi-pro and pro classes as well. So I shoot in the open classes, and I like to shoot in the judging classes, like I said earlier, but I shoot in the judging 45. So that is open 45 for both ASA and IBO. So my max distance is 45 yards, plus or minus a yard or two, so about to 47. But the same thing's true for the known classes, right? It's the same deal, 45 out to about 47 yards. Now, in terms of the arrow you can shoot, I believe now all restrictions are gone. The IBO used to have restrictions on arrows that you can shoot in terms of diameter. Everybody is a minimum, except for the kids, I believe. The kids and youth, there's still some stipulations, because obviously kids are shooting very short draw lengths, very light poundages. You still have to shoot a 5 grain per pound arrow. Now, a 5 grain per pound arrow at 70 pounds is a 350 grain arrow. That is the lowest weight that you would be allowed to shoot. At a 60 pound bow, you'd have the minimum of 300 grain arrow, and you get the idea. You do the math along from there. So I like to shoot, and this is where everybody's opinions vary wildly. I like to shoot the biggest diameter arrow that I can get away with outside. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm gonna be super prepared for every single shoot that I go to. In particular, there's a lot of wind. Today, 5 to 10 mile an hour breeze, that's okay. 15 to 20 gets a little bit hairy because I like to shoot a 27 diameter arrow, which is super stiff, but it's really good at catching lines. You'll see a lot of guys in the known pro and the ASA shooting a big diameter shaft. You'll see some guys in the unknown game as well, also shooting a 26 or a 27 diameter. Most people fall between 23 and 25. That's where a lot of people live in their diameter. That gives them a good weight, so they get a good speed, but then they also are able to catch some lines compared to, say, a standard diameter hunting arrow, a 5 mil or a 4 mil shaft. So here I'm going to be shooting this. My bow right now, I'm shooting an Elite Verdict at 70 pounds, 31-inch draw. I am shooting the smooth mod, which comes stock on the Verdict, and I'm shooting around 82-ish, 80% let off, which is where I like to be shooting. Some people like to shoot a lower let off for target archery. I find I enjoy a little bit more comfort. I don't want to go all the way out to 85, 90%. It's too much. I want to have a little bit of pressure as it pulls against me. That lower that let off, the more it wants to go on me, so I have to really execute a strong shot. But this bow setup and with this arrow, which is a gold tip XXX, weighs about 460 grains. I'm going about 284 feet a second, which leaves me plenty of wiggle if I'm going to shoot in the ASA. I'm definitely slow if I'm going to go shoot in open 45, which does not have a speed limit for the IBO. I'm definitely putting myself in a disadvantage there. But I don't know, I find that that's a really forgiving arrow enough for me outdoors. I shoot decent scores with it, and it's very reliable. I can take this exact arrow, which I did this year at Lancaster, at the indoor scene, shot it indoors there, shot it very well, and I just brought the whole setup right outside. So I haven't flapped my gums long enough. Let's actually get to shooting this target. So depending if I'm going to shoot known or unknown, of course now the wind picks up as I step further away from the camera. If you're going to shoot known or unknown is how you really play this game of how you want to shoot at the target. So for me in unknown, since I don't know the distance to this target, I actually have to make a decision on how far away is this target and how forgiving of a shot can I make at this target based if it's got a center 11 for an IBO or if it has a lower upper 12 for ASA. So this is an ASA style target. I'm going to shoot it as such, even though it does have the IBO 11 in the center. I can see this target is definitely out there. It's definitely not my max distance of 45 yards. I'm gonna say it's somewhere around 35. And the only way you can get good at judging targets is actually seeing them. So this is a Mackenzie Kure, so it's like the middle third of the whitetail sized animal. And all ASA targets, their scoring ring, the 10 ring, stays exactly the same. Whether you're shooting the tiny wolverine or the strutting turkey, or you're shooting the big blesbok, impala, so on and so forth, that 10 ring stays the same size. Where on a IBO target, they vary drastically. So the strutting turkey, little tiny 10 ring, little tiny 11 ring, and you really have to play the game safer. Okay, but we're gonna shoot an ASA style target here and talk our way through it. So when I first step up to a target, we get a few minutes to judge this target. If I lead off this target, I'd be the first one to shoot. Since I don't know the distance to this target, like I say, I'm going to look at it and say, okay, this is probably the most number I see it for, just based off of me seeing targets. And this is the closest that I see it for. And sometimes I'm totally wrong, depending on topography, uphill, downhill, isn't in a tunnel. This one kind of has a tunnel look because I have this big vine off to my right. I have a big, huge, gnarly shagbark hickory off here to the left and a couple little maple saplings. So I think this target actually is looking a little bit farther than I think it is. So now I can do a combination of ground judging. You know, hey, I'm used to looking at targets in my yard that are 20, 25, 30 yards, whatever that may be. Do I see that distance here? And then from there, I can go ahead and think about setting my sight and executing a shot. Once you come to full draw in an open class, on your sight, you cannot adjust it. So you can let down if you don't think you got the right number, recoup yourself, you get 3 drawbacks. You gotta let it go on the third. If you pull back, you're like, oh gosh, that looks really close to my lens. You know, maybe you have to aim a little bit lower, maybe it looks a little bit further away. But again, the only way you get better at this, known and unknown, is by actually staring at targets through your scope and here with the naked eye. So, since I'm judging, I have a pretty good idea. I like to shoot Diamondback by Vortex binoculars. These are 10 by 42s. And I can have a pretty good guess based on, once I get this into focus, how much of my field of view that target fills out. Knowing this is like a full-size deer target, and that 10 ring is always the same size, I can get a pretty good guesstimation. Also, I can see the scoring rings, and I know with my eyeballs, in particular my right eye, which is the worst one, unfortunately the one I shoot with, if I can see the 10 ring at this distance, I know it's probably not past 37 yards. Okay, that's just from me shooting. I just know that. Okay, so doing a little bit of ground judging, I do a thing which I visualize like I'm holding a tennis ball, and I throw it, and where would be the halfway bounce point, right? Think of like table tennis, right? You have the net in the middle. Where would be the middle point of that table if I was going to hit the ball right in the middle? Imagine the net's not there. For it to bounce up at the same height, at the same height on the other side of the table. So knowing that, and I'm the first one to lead this target because, well, no one else is here. I'm gonna say that this target is every bit of 36 yards. Now, if I'm shooting unknown and I have the opportunity to listen to other people's arrows, that makes a world of difference. You'll hear a lot of professionals talk about that. And if you know the speed of other people's bows, and particularly in the ASA, where you're all capped at 280 feet a second, you get a real good ear eventually listening to other people's bows and how long that arrow takes to hit the target. If you're in the known game, you don't care. You're pulling out a rangefinder, you're clicking. We'll talk about known in a second. Because known games, oftentimes, they stretch out those courses to that max distance because they're trying to test you on your shooting ability, not your judging ability and your shooting ability, just on your shooting ability. So I'm gonna say 36 yards. What I'm gonna do here, I like to go for a lot of uppers on ASA targets because I have a tendency to dip out of the bottom. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say this is 36 yards. What I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna actually set this sight a little bit hot. I'm gonna go 37.5, okay? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call upper, but I'm gonna hold on the lower. And if I fall out of that lower, I'll hit somewhere in the center 10. If I stay on, I might rise up into the upper. Now I know that this is a tricky game and there are various different opinions on how to do this. Yep, I'm gonna go 37.5 and I'm holding the lower, but I'm going to call upper. You have to call the upper if you wanna hit it, all right? All right, first cold shot of the day. Let's see how this goes. Well, I drastically underjudged it, and I hit my finger with the fletching. I think I might be an 8 on the left side, or I might have just caught 10. No, I caught 10. I'm 10 on the low left side, so I actually really should have, if I wanted to rise up into the 12, I really should have shot it for like 39. So 37.5 was the actual distance to this target. I'm just on the left side of the 12 here. So I'm still a 10, so that looks really good. So let's actually set this for 38. Let's hold on the upper. Let's see what happens here. And the wind's picked up and it's blowing from behind you guys towards me. So I'm gonna hold on the right-hand side of the upper if I can. And it broke on the right-hand side of the upper and it stayed on the right-hand side of the upper. Let's go down and check it out. So this is the really big thing with judging. You have to learn to what you're going to play is safe and what you want to actually gun for that you actually need. Come down here and I'll talk about it. All right, so hopefully you can hear me okay. So let's see here. Yep, so I'm just clipping this 10 ring on my second shot. So I held, right around in here. Probably should have left it at 37.5, but I'm just barely clipping this 10 ring. So I'm still a 10, gunning at this upper here. Here's the lower. So I was holding around in here with a 37.5 yard, thinking that I was adding a little bit too much, and if I rose up, I was gonna be here. If I broke too low, I would at least still hang 10 on this exterior ring. So that's a 10 all day. So I'm gonna move this target around the woods here as I continue to talk and shoot. But the big thing here is, I don't know if I needed this target or not, right? I'm not standing on a 20-yard course or a 30 target course. I don't know what I need for a number. But I'm also keeping in mind the safe play. So shooting in unknown, if it's a close target, I know I gotta set an aggressive number and I gotta gun right at it, okay? I don't wanna have a safe play, but if it's clear out at 45, 47 yards, I'm gonna set it for that. I'm gonna hold center 10 right there in the center, even if it's an ASA target. And if I hang 10, yippee skippy. If you hit 10 every single time, you're gonna hold even, okay? That's like hitting par in golf. If you hit an 8, now you're 2 under par, which is bad. You want to be over. That's where the golf analogy stops. In order to be over, or to shoot up, as we call it in 3D, you have to be able to hit bonus rings, either an 11 in IBO or a 12 in ASA. So if I needed this target, for sure, I probably would have actually set it for about what I thought it was, 36, and actually gunned right at the upper. And if I fell at the bottom, I still would have maintained a 10. But I set it for 37.5, played a safe number, and I actually underjudged it a little bit. I was a little bit cold on my number. So that's kind of the game to play within the game with unknown. But let's talk about known here. We'll click the next distance here. All right, so let's say we're shooting a known competition. A really, really fun, if you're in the Northeast, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, a really, really awesome shoot is the RBD Triple Classic. It is a big known shoot. It's flighted. Lots of cool stuff. I will put a link down to that in the description below. Rob D'Alfonso and his crew up at Ram Archery in Gillette, PA do a great job with that shoot. We're actually a sponsor. Average Jack Archery is a sponsor of that shoot. We do a big shoot for all the guys and gals in the hunter classes, because that's where I cut my teeth. That's where I spent most of my time. And so it's a great shoot. Lots of cool hard cash on the line. So that's really nice, and it's flighted, so it's not built by classes. So even if you shoot in the hunter class, you have an opportunity to be in the top flight and win a couple $1,000. I mean, what kind of 3D known shoot are you going to in the Northeast where it gives you that kind of option? It just doesn't exist. So one thing that I know when I go to shoot that, and I learned a lot shooting in it last year, I was able to hit 2 out of 3 legs. The first leg I shot 15 down, which isn't terrible, but for a known distance shoot, I felt pretty bad about myself. And so I went and readjusted kind of what I was doing. It was my first time shooting open in 3D. I've always shot bow hunter in 3D. But it was my first time shooting open, and it's a 50-yard max class. And a lot of your known shoots are gonna have longer distances because you don't have to judge it. You are just basically just competing on your shooting ability, all right? So, and that makes sense. So this target here is very close. I'm gonna pull up my rangefinder. Yeah, I'm getting 28 yards. So 20 yards, that's a real close shot for a known open shooter who's a max 50, but you'll still get the idea here. When it comes to shooting in open, and shooting in known like this, and even if you're shooting hunter in known like this, particularly when they're stretching the things out, you can't see scoring range. all right? It's very difficult to see scoring rings. I only shoot a 4x lens, so I'm not blowing up the target by large amounts. Because I'm shooting it and I can't see scoring rings, what I want to aim off of is not a scoring ring. I want to actually aim off of a shadow. I want to aim off of a spot. And this ties right into hunting season. So a lot of people think, oh, when I go and shoot a 3D course with my buddies, I don't shoot for scoring rings, I shoot for a kill shot. Well, you're still trying to hit a particular spot. And that's what 3D is all about. You're actually trying to hit. Maybe you see a patch of arrow holes. Maybe there's a part of the muscle in the foam of the animal. Maybe a hairline looks off, something like that. That's what you're shooting at in the woods anyway, right? You can see the scapula, right? That V of the deer with its shoulder blade as it goes up. That's exactly what you're doing in 3D, right? You're just actually picking a spot, but it's just not in the kill zone all the time. Mostly it's in the double lung area, right? So for me at this target right here, even though I can't see the scoring rings, what I'm gonna do when I look through my binos is I'm actually gonna look for a shadow or an arrow hole or a bunch of arrow holes. So I'm the one who's shot this target the most. I've gunned at a lot of lower 12s, and I can see the pockets, a nice dark brown gray spot where that lower 12 is. I can't see it with the naked eye very well, but I can definitely see it through my binos. And even though I can't see the scoring rings at 50 yards, I should be able in my lens to be able to see that dark spot. So I know that is an aiming point, all right? But it doesn't mean that's what I'm actually going to be trying to hit, all right? And this is where playing known really comes into play for the local yokel guy or the amateur guy. The pros are setting their sights and holding on a specific ring, and they're hitting it. You look at guys like Kyle Douglas and Jimmy Lutz and Tim Gillingham and Braden Galantine. I mean, these guys can just literally hold the thing on. Levi Morgan in the unknown game, Danny McCarthy in the unknown game, they can set their sight knowing exactly what they're doing and hit that ring exactly the way they want to hit it. For most of us amateurs, we're sitting there, we're kind of floating around a bit. Maybe the topography's weird, uphill, downhill, side hill, whatever. And we're really trying to just focus just to hold the pin on the target. So instead of trying to hit a ring about this big at 50 yards, I'm gonna try to hit that whole 10 ring, but holding on something else. So here, for the example, even though we're at 28 yards, I know it's 28, but let's just say it's 50. It's 50 and I can see that lower. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna set my sight, and pin guys, you can do the exact same thing. What I'm gonna do is just what I did for my unknown shot. I'm gonna set my sight hot, all right? So I know it's 28, so let's say I set it at the 28 right there. Now, if I shoot at 28 and I gun at that lower spot, and I fall out the bottom, now I'm shooting an 8. Or if I really fall out the bottom, now I'm shooting a 5. All right, so I'm really down in score. But let's say, for example, like I said, 28 yards, I want to hit the center of that 10 ring, all right? So I know based on the speed of my bow that if I set this to 31, and we'll go 30 and a half, I have plenty of meat left on the bone to rise up into that because I'm aiming at the lower, but I don't necessarily want to hit the lower. I'm making a safe shot. Now, if I think at 48 yards that I can see that perfectly, I can hold on it, no wind, no topography, big flat shot, sure, I might try it. But here, my goal, my hope anyway, when I make this shot, is that I'm gonna hit right in the middle of the center 11, hit a 10, in this case on an ASA target, and I'm gonna hold par. So let's see if I do that. Gunning right at that lower with my sight set about 2.5 yards hot. Perfect, it's right over the 12. Yep, it's right over the 12. I might even caught the 12. But that's the kind of shot, I'm very safely in the 10. And if I just so happen to catch a 12, yay me. But I'm an amateur, okay, sure. Do I want to be a pro one day? Absolutely. Just hitting a 10 and staying even make me feel a lot better and build my confidence as I shoot throughout the day? Absolutely, and that's the important part. If you're first starting out into 3D, or if you've been shooting for a while and you want to shoot competitive 3D, focus on actually making that shot that you want. So I'm going to set this to 28. I'm gonna gun right at the upper, because at this distance I can actually see it. Might have caught it, might have been a little high. No, I absolutely smashed it, which is nice for 28 yards. But this target most likely be at 50. Let's go check it out. I cannot stress enough the importance of making a confident shot. That's what builds it. I mean, that's what builds your love for shooting 3D. Forget where you place on the podium. If you shoot confident shots, and you end up not shooting a whole bunch down, you make safe shots. Sure, are you gonna be Levi Morgan overnight? Absolutely not. But are you gonna wanna do this again and build off of that experience and build off that quality of shooting? Absolutely. I just missed the lower. Let's take a look. This is what I'm talking about here. I knew that distance was 28 yards, okay? And I mean, a half a millimeter out from hitting the lower. But this is where I was aiming. But I clearly fell out of my peep, or I ended up somewhere down in here. And even though I set my sight hot by about 2 yards, I still barely am on the upper half of the lower 12, okay? If I had set that for 28, I probably would have ended up down in here, inside the core line here, which is this 8 ring, but I would have shot 2 down, all right? Here I set it for 28 on the dot, I gunned at the upper, and I actually smoked it, okay? But in confidence-wise, if I had ended up way down in here and shot an 8, and I was just underneath this lower, now what? Right, now I'm 2 down. Now I'm playing catch up. Now I don't feel confident. Now I'm taking shots that are aggressive. I'm trying to gun at a lower 12 or an upper 12 at 50 yards, at 52 yards, at 47 yards. And now I could be shooting way out of whack. Here I made a safe play. Sure, here, this one I did because I was so close, but I made a safe play, shot a 10, and I'm staying par. I'm staying even, and I'm ready to take on the next target. Well, I try to not give myself any favors with this target, and I think I hurt myself a little bit more than I wanted to, but this is the kind of thing I wanted. It was in a real dark tunnel. I have a whole bunch of stuff around it, and it makes it look really far. But one thing that's also true is because of this, the only thing I can see is basically the cores, basically the scoring ring. And that's all they legally have to give you. If the front half of the animal's blocked off, the back half of the animal's blocked off, the feet are gone, whatever. If that's what the course range officers and whatnot have set up, course managers have set up, that's what you got to shoot. I got the sun in my face. It's going to give me all kinds of glare on my lens. This is a tough shot. So knowing that, I want to shoot this not aggressively. Because I'm probably not going to be able to see everything I want to see, execute the shot that I want to execute. Now, I'm preparing for RBD, which is in just a couple of weeks. I have a ballpark idea of what I would shoot this for. Just for fun, I'm going to judge it first and then click the rangefinder. I do this a lot. Sometimes I'll judge it, shoot it, see where I hit, and then range it from there. I'm going to guess that this target is probably around, kind of doing my ping pong trick here, my tennis ball trick. It's every bit, I'm gonna say, 43 yards. I'm getting 42 or 43 on the button, so I feel really good about myself all of a sudden. That feels really nice. I'm getting 42 or 43 now. It's in a dark tunnel. Sometimes your rangefinder can't pick up a dark tunnel perfectly. Maybe you shoot the course at the beginning of the day, it's in full sun, into the day, it's in shade, whatever, and vice versa. But I know what I can see again is that lower patch, right? Now there's also a branch that comes up behind the back, what would be, so this animal will be facing to the right, or excuse me, this animal will be facing to the left. And so I know if it's facing to the left on an ASA target, the upper 12 is to the left, lower 12 is to the right, and the 14 is as far away from the upper 12 as possible. That's how they set up targets. They never stick the upper 12 and the 14 closer together. They're always on opposites of each other. So since I know that, I know the upper 12 is to the left, the lower 12 is down to the right, and that branch that comes up from the front head of the animal is based on where the core line goes. It looks like that branch is going to bisect that core line right at the height of the 12, upper 12. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I'm looking at. So I know that's a good reference, a good aiming point for that spot there. Now it's nowhere near, it's not touching the 8 ring, it's not obstructing the 8 ring, but I know that's a good area of reference because I can see where they popped in that removable core. I can see that core line there. So based off of that, do I want to aim at the lower where I can see the dark spot or aim at the upper? In this case, I'm actually going to aim at that upper area. I'm going to set this a squidge on the cold side. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna set it cold. So I'm gonna go 41 yards because I'm getting 42, 43, maybe even 41 and a half. And this is a flat shot, so I don't have to worry about topography, up or down. If you go uphill, traditionally you have to add a yard or two. If you're going downhill, depending on the angle, you might have to remove it. Yeah, so I'm going 41 and a half, and I'm gonna aim at that upper. And I'm gonna call upper, so upper. If I hit it, yay. If I fall underneath it, I'm still gonna be a 10. good shot. Yep, we gotta push a little bit right. We're on the bottom edge, if you will, the 12 to the right. Wind is coming left to right. I'm shooting pretty big diameter arrows here, so that would make some sense. Also, I could have also hit it a little, you know, release it a little bit to the right. Let's go down and take a look. So all in all, just a really well executed shot here in my opinion. So I knew the distance because I had ranged it. I was getting 42, 43 yards. So I set it for 41.5. And if I was shooting pins, I would have probably put, you know, 40, a little bit on the high side, right? Depending on how I have my pins set. And the wind has pushed it a little bit right to left. Maybe I pushed a little right to left. This ring, I mean, about the size, a little big of a 50-cent piece, right? So it's not all that big, but I'm still well within the 10 and plenty of room to play over here. I could have been a whole nother shaft to the right and still caught a 10. And I know I didn't hit a bonus ring. Yes, I knew the exact distance. Do I care? Absolutely not. I made a very good shot. I feel really confident about what I did. And sure, I did not hit a 12, but I did hit a 10, and I lived to fight another target. And that will ultimately boost your confidence in 3D and want you coming back for more. If this doesn't make you just as excited to do this at getting in the deer woods in the fall, you really need to evaluate your life goals. But that's all for this video on my take on how I shoot 3D, how I continue to have fun with it, keep coming back for more. Sure, there's gonna be lots of days where I get frustrated, I just don't execute shots well, and so on and so forth, and I completely understand all of that, right? That's just part of the sport of archery. You're gonna have good days and bad days. But whatever I can do to encourage myself to continue to have more positive days than negative days, I'm definitely gonna do it. I'm gonna shut the camera off, take a few more shots here, enjoy God's beautiful creation. I hope you're able to yourself get outside, enjoy the sport of archery hunting, and definitely 3D archery if you so choose. Definitely enjoy God's beautiful creation, and we'll get to see you next time.